Hello students, welcome to today's session. So far we have discussed objects, class, why is class known as object factory, and I have discussed in detail practical coding examples for both the topics. Today I'll be discussing why is class known as a user defined data type and message passing between objects. So class as a user defined data type. Now you need to understand the data type. What is the meaning of data type? Okay. So let's break the word into two. Okay. Data and type. So data, you know that data represents information. Okay. So the data can be in the form of integer, it could be in the form of decimal, it could be in the form of character, it could be in the form of image, it could be in the form of a video, it could be in the form of an audio file. Okay, so all these different kinds of data, they can be classified into certain category. Okay, so there are certain categories of data which are already built in a programming language. Okay, for example, integer, decimal, character. Okay, these kinds of data are already built in Java language. Okay, for storing an integer value you need an integer variable. For storing a decimal value you need a float or a double kind of variable. For storing a character you need a char variable. Okay, so if I say what is the type of 1 or -1, you'll say me it's an integer, isn't it? If I ask you the type of 34, you'll tell me that it's an integer. Similarly, if I ask you the type of -1.32, you'll tell me the type is decimal. Okay, or you can say float or double. Similarly, the type of 2.5 is also float or double. If I ask you what is the type of this single quotation symbol, okay, you'll tell me it's a character. If I ask you what is this 3, again this is a character. Similarly, this hash symbol is also a character type of data. The single letter A, this letter A is also a character, a single character type of data. So you see, the data can be categorized either in integer, decimal, character, audio, video, image, okay, anything. But the types I've mentioned here, okay, they are known as primitive type. Okay, because they are the very basics of type of data. Okay, from these basic types you can derive complex types of data. So these basic types are also known as primitive type or predefined data types. Okay, primitive data types or predefined data types. So if you look at the definition of data types are the means to identify the type of data. Okay, so in Java we have got several built-in data types such as char, int, long, float, double, boolean. Okay, all these different types of data are built in the language itself. but data is not available in such simple forms all the time, isn't it? Suppose if I ask you what is the date, okay, now can you find any single type of data here or here which can store the date? No, you cannot, okay, because date has got three different parts or units to it, isn't it? A date is represented, or I can say that a date is a combination of three things, three parts. That is, which day is it, which month is it, which year is it. If you combine these three, it becomes one type of data, that is date type of data, isn't it? So if I say that the date today is 25th of May 2020, so this data is of type date, okay. Similarly, if I use the example of student, okay, now student has got name, age, address, roll number, gender, and many more things, okay. So you cannot use built-in data types to store complex data such as student and data, student and date. You need something different, okay, and that something different is known as user defined data type. So user defined data types are created with the help of primitive types as well as other existing user defined types, okay. Let's see an example, okay. With this example it will become more clear. Okay, first thing, we need to understand how we declare a normal primitive type of data, okay. So if you want to store a number, you will declare a variable of type int, isn't it, of type int or type long, okay. If you want to store a symbol, you'll or a character, you'll use which data type? Char data type. If you want to store a decimal value, you will use the float data type, isn't it? So what is the syntax for making a variable? The syntax is data type data type plus the variable name, data type plus the variable name, data type plus the variable name, okay. So if you want to declare a variable, you have to first write the data type and then you have to write the variable name, okay. That is how you will declare a primitive data type, okay. Now, once you have declared a data type, you have to assign some values to it, isn't it? Okay, so let's see how that assignment is done. The assignment is done using the assignment operator. Okay, so this equal to sign is the assignment operator. So once I've declared num, I can assign, let's say 10 to num. Once I've declared symbol variable, I can assign any character to this symbol variable. Similarly, I can assign any decimal value to this money variable, okay, because money has already been declared here. This is how you deal with built-in data types. Now let's see the example of user defined data type. In the previous slide we saw two different types of data relating to user defined data types, isn't it? They were date and student. So let's say I've created a data type of a user defined data type called as date. Similarly, I've created a user defined data type by the name of student. Okay, that means what? Now don't worry, I will show you in the next slide how to create your own data types. Okay, for now I'm showing you how to use it. Okay, once you see both how to create and how to use, things will be easier. Okay, so see, here also you have written date D1, isn't it? Date D1, that means what? Date is the type, just as here int was the type, isn't it? And num was the variable name. Similarly, here also date is the type and D1 is the variable name, and student is the type and S1 is the variable name. Okay, so can you see the correlation? For declaring a primitive type, the syntax is data type plus variable name. For non-primitive also, non-primitive means for user defined types also, you will do the same way. Okay, data type, then the variable name. Okay, next, how to assign some data to this user defined type? The assignment is done again with the help of assignment operator. Okay, and before I can assign values to D1 and S1, I need to create an object. Okay, I need to create an object. So the object creation has been done here, new date. Okay, and that new date will create an object and assign the reference to D1. Okay, similarly, new student will create an object of type student and assign the reference to S1. Okay, so once the object is created and reference has been assigned to D1 and S1, you can assign values to it. Okay, so in date type, let's say we have three parts: day, month and year. So for if you want to assign some value to day part, you'll write d1 dot day. Okay, d1 dot is equal to 23. That means assign the value of 23 to day of d1. Okay, similarly assign the value of 3 to D1's month and assign the value of 2020 to D1's year. Okay, so you can see that there is a lot of similarity between the primitive types and non-primitive types. Okay, now let's see how you can create your own types. Okay, and this will make the concept more clear. So let's see here. Basically, creating your own type, your own data type means you are creating a class. Okay, when you create a class, you are creating your own data type. Remember this: when you are creating a class, you are creating a user defined data type, your own data type. Okay, so I have created a class date here. Okay, and this date class has got three instance variables. They are day, month and year. Okay, similarly I have got a student class here, and the student class has got these variables, instance variables: name, address, gender, age, roll number, and enroll date. Okay, now in this student class, can you see the difference? Can you see something different from the date class? Well, the difference here is that you have got this date kind of data. Okay, date is already a user defined data type, whereas the other type here, okay, it is of int type, which is primitive type. That means what? A user defined data type can be a combination of primitive plus non-primitive, or built-in data types plus user defined data types. Okay, or it can be also simply a combination of built-in data types. Okay, both ways you can do, depending upon the requirement. So this is how you create your own data type. So let's sum it up. User defined data types, they are combination of primitive types plus non-primitive types. Okay, that is why they are also known as composite data type, because they contains different kind of data. A user defined data type contains different types of data. That is why it is known as a composite data type. Okay, and this question is asked in the board exam. Why is class known as a composite type? So you must be now in a position to answer this question, that why is class also known as a composite type. The answer is because the class consists of different types of data, isn't it? The primitive type of data represents only a single type of data, whereas a user defined data type represents many different types of data. It's a combination of many different types of data. That is why it is known as composite types. Okay, now let's see the difference between built-in data types and user defined data types. Okay, and before that I just want to remind you that built-in data type, built-in, primitive and fundamental, they are all the same thing. Okay, fundamental type, primitive type, built-in types, they are same. Okay, they are just different names, but they are representing the same thing. Okay, similarly, user defined, composite and non-primitive types, they are the same thing. Okay, so now let's see the difference between these primitive types and non-primitive types. The first point is primitive data types are built-in data types. That means this kind of data is the fundamental basic data which is already available in the program. Okay, sorry, in the language, in the programming language. That is why it is known as primitive type. Next, the user defined type is created by the programmer. Okay, it's created by the programmer. Built-in is already existing in the programming language, whereas this non-primitive type is created by the programmer. Okay, Second point, the size of primitive type is fixed. That means the size of, let's say, integer is fixed. That means integer is 4 bytes, char is 2 bytes. Okay, so all the primitive types have a fixed size. They will occupy a fixed memory size in the RAM, isn't it? Whereas the user defined data type will, its size will vary. Okay, so let's see the previous slide again. So this date class, okay, this date type of data will require different size than this student class. Okay, so let's say if integer is 4 bytes, okay, that means date class will probably require 4 into 3, 12 bytes of memory size. Okay, because we have got 3 integer variables here. That means we can say that the date class or the date data type will require 12 bytes of memory, whereas this will be, the student type of data will require different amount of memory. Okay, because it has got different number of variables and different types of variables. Okay, so the size of user defined data type is not fixed, whereas the size of primitive types are fixed. That's the second difference. Okay, the third difference is that the primitive types are available anywhere in the program. Okay, they are available anywhere in the program, whereas the user defined data types, their availability is dependent upon the scope. Okay, remember, okay, regarding scope, I'll be discussing it in the future videos. Okay, for now you can ignore this third point. Okay, when we discuss access specifiers, okay, then you'll understand the meaning of scope. Okay, now the next topic is message passing. Okay, message passing, this is the last topic in our first chapter. Okay, so message passing, we discussed while discussing objects, okay, that objects can communicate, isn't it? In real life, also objects are always communicating with another object, isn't it? For example, if you have a bicycle at your home, it's an object. Okay, if you keep it in your garage, it will just sit there for hundreds of years, nothing will happen. You need another object, that is you. Okay, you as an object will interact with the bicycle object, then the bicycle object will start moving, isn't it? So objects can interact with each other. Okay, and that interaction is done through message passing. Okay, so there are two ways to pass a message. Okay, one is you can pass a message to an object. Okay, and the other is message passing between two objects. Okay, so now let's see how these two are different. So let's see the example code here. Okay, I've created a class called washing machine. Washing machine is my class. Inside the washing machine class, I have declared two functions, start wash and stop wash. Okay, and then I've created a main function. Inside the main function, I have created two washing machine objects, that is WM1 and WM2. Now using WM1, I can call start wash and stop wash. Using WM2 also I can call start wash and stop wash. Okay, that means but for keeping things simple, I've just called start wash functions using both the objects in this example. Okay, but the main thing to understand here is that both the objects, okay, WM1 and WM2 are invoking, are giving a message to the object WM1 to start wash. Okay, in this line, WM2 object is being given a message to start wash. Okay, so this is a kind of message passing. Okay, when you are asking an object to invoke its function, that's message passing. Okay, so I'm asking WM1 in this line. In this line, I'm asking W1 to call its start wash function. Okay, and in this line, I am asking WM2 object to start its start wash function. Okay, so this is what? This is message passing to an object. Okay, now let's see what is message passing between objects. Okay, for this also I've written another code. So let's see this code, what's happening here. And this code is actually representing this diagram given in your book. Okay, in this diagram we have got two objects, isn't it? First object is a person, second object is a washing machine, and the person is asking this, the person object is using the washing machine object to clean or to do the washing. Okay, so person is the sender and this is the receiver of the message. Now let's implement this in code. Okay, so that you'll be able to understand it more clearly. Okay, so notice I've got three classes. First class is washing machine class. Okay, it has got two functions, start wash and stop wash. Similarly, I've got a person class. It has got a single function called wash. Okay, and inside its parameter, it has got a washing machine type of parameter. Okay, that means what? A person object needs a washing machine object to be able to wash, isn't it? A person object needs a washing machine object. That means I can say that the person object is dependent upon the washing machine object. Okay, so the wash function here, which is inside the person class, has got parameter of type washing machine. Okay, that means the person will have access to a certain washing machine and it can wash clothes using that particular washing machine. Okay, so notice inside the function I have written wm dot start wash and wm dot stop wash. This should be stop wash. Okay, by mistake I've written start wash. That's a mistake. It should be stop wash. Okay, so wm dot start wash and wm dot stop wash. Okay, now let's see the third class. The third class will be our application class. Okay, it will be using the two classes above which was declared above. Okay, so first I'm creating the person object here. Okay, person Ramu. I've given the name of the object as Ramu. Okay, so person Ramu is equal to new person. So the object Ramu object. Okay, second is I've created an LG of LG object here, and this LG is of type washing machine. That means I've got two objects here, person object and a washing machine object. Okay, now interaction can happen between Ramu and LG. That means Ramu and washing machine. Interaction between the object Ramu and the object washing machine. Let's see how this happens. Okay, so I'm using Ramu. Okay, I'm telling Ramu to wash. Okay, I'm telling Ramu to wash. That means wash is a function of Ramu. Okay, so the control will come here to wash. Okay, see, Ramu's type is person, isn't it? Ramu's type is person. That means when I call Ramu.wash, the control will come here to this method wash, because wash is inside person, isn't it? That's why I'm able to call Ramu.wash. Okay, because Ramu's type is person. Ramu's type is person. So when I call Ramu.wash, control will come here. Okay, and when the control comes here, this wash function requires a washing machine object. It requires a washing machine object. So I've created I've created a washing machine object here, isn't it? LG, I've created a washing machine object here. So I can pass this object to this wash function, because the object is required here. A washing machine object is required here. See, the type of WM is washing machine and the type of LG is also washing machine. So I'm passing LG to this WM. Okay, now the wash function has got access to the LG object. The wash function inside Ramu's wash function has got access to the washing machine object. Okay, so now when I say WM dot start wash, okay, so the control will go to the object's start wash function. Okay, and start wash function is where it's inside the washing machine object. Okay, similarly, when I call stop wash using WM, it will come to the function stop wash, which is existing inside the washing machine object. Okay, so you can see how two different objects are communicating here. Okay, the Ramu object is using the washing machine object. Okay, so Ramu is the person who is initiating the start wash and stop wash function, which belongs to the LG washing machine. Okay, so I hope you have understood how the objects can communicate. Okay, how two different objects can communicate. And also, when you just have a single object, when you are dealing with a single object and you are invoking its function, that is also a message passing. Okay, so we have completed this chapter here.